Mario Kart Double Dash is quite an out there title compared to the rest of the Mario Kart games, but that doesn't mean it's a bad game at all. Sure, the controls are questionable to say the least, but the game does have a pretty decent track selection. So that's why today I'm going to be ranking every single track in Mario Kart Double Dash. As usual, this will be based on how fun the tracks are overall, how memorable they are, and if they are somewhat creative or original. So without further ado, let's get started. 16. Sherbetland. Starting off with the tracks that are just not fun to play at all. And this is by far the best example of a track like that, besides maybe Vanilla Lake 1 and 2. Mario Kart Double Dash already doesn't have good controls, so pair that together with a slippery track from hell and you've got one of the worst tracks in the entire series. Sherbetland is just your very basic Mario Kart ice track, and while the cave does look pretty nice, the entire track is just unplayable due to the horrible physics and controls. There's really no redeeming qualities to this track. Even the music sounds terrible. 15. Dry Desert. Man, do I hate this track. I was never a fan of Dry Desert in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and this version really isn't much better. The track is extremely unappealing to look at, and to compensate for that, you've got an extremely annoying tornado, and just like in Sherbetland, a track that is way too slippery for some weird reason. And overall, this track is just boring. There's only a couple of easy to avoid pokies, a quicksand pit that is also really easy to avoid, anti-tornado, but that's it. And talking about horrible music, this song somehow manages to make me cringe inside. Like, what are these instruments? They sound like dog shit. 14. Luigi's Circuit. One of the more original opening circuits, but still not a great one. The gimmick here is that the roads are now interconnected. Wow, so creative. Unfortunately, this gimmick doesn't really make the track more interesting in any way. You hardly ever come across a situation where you collide with other racers, and even when you do, the very simple track layout still makes it fall short of a fun experience. It's not a bad track, just really mediocre. 13. Mushroom Bridge. Why a lot of people like this track is beyond me. Mushroom Bridge is just a really boring track with almost nothing to make the track interesting. Sure, there's moving cars and buses and stuff, but those are easily avoidable and only make the track look more interesting than it really is. The layout is extremely generic, the visuals are nothing spectacular, and the traffic on the road is barely a hindrance at all. The track has some cool things here and there, like being able to drive on a bridge, but even then the main course itself is just boring. At least it's not the Mario Kart DS rendition, because my god, but still. 12. Mario Circuit. The obligated track that every Mario Kart game has to have, and this rendition is just okay. You've got a chain jump, piranha plants near the end, a very bumpy road, and a neat little tunnel, but that's about it. The track is still fun, don't get me wrong, just pretty forgettable and relatively boring compared to others. 11. Baby Park. The infamous Double Dash track. Baby Park may look very boring at first. I mean, it's literally just a tiny oval with nothing on the track. But when you actually play the track, oh boy, that could not have been further from the truth. Well, it really depends. A race can either be super fun or pretty boring, and it all depends on luck with items. Even if you don't get a lot of items on the track, it can still be quite fun because you're constantly colliding with other racers. Other than that though, this track is just super basic. 10. Peach Beach. The vibes are real. Peach Beach is just your average beach level. It's got some pretty cool things going on though, like cataquacks roaming about, tidal water, and some pretty nifty shortcuts. But that's just about it. The cataquacks can either be really easy to avoid or a huge nuisance, which can make this track a pain sometimes. And for the rest, this level is just okay. 9. Mushroom City. Mushroom Bridge was pretty terrible, but Mushroom City is actually a decent track. Instead of having just a boring loop, you now have multiple split paths to choose from, making the track a lot more dynamic. The track also takes place at nighttime, which is always a plus. However, that's just about it for all the cool things about this track. The many split paths are cool, but they don't really bring enough creativity to this track for it to be a truly unique experience. 8. 8. Yoshi Circuit. One of the better circuit tracks in the franchise, Yoshi Circuit takes its name very literally. And that's because the entire track is modeled after a Yoshi, which is a very unique touch since it's the only track in the series being modeled after a character, which kinda surprises me. Anyway, besides Yoshi Circuit being Yoshi shaped, it's also surprisingly fun and pretty difficult as well. There's a lot of shortcuts to take, and the large amount of twists and curves makes it a pretty fun experience. It's still a circuit track though, and apart from the layout, it's got nothing noteworthy going on. 7. Bowser's Castle. Yet another track that simply every Mario Kart game must have. The quality of Bowser's Castles have ranged a lot in the series. They're either really good or just terrible, and this Bowser's Castle is kind of in between. The track has a mix of classic elements like lava, thwomps, and fire bars, but it's also got a couple of new traits, the most obvious one being this giant Bowser statue breathing fireballs at the end. And while a large portion of the track is enjoyable, there's also some sections that are pretty empty and pretty boring as a result. It's still a pretty good track though. 6. Wario Coliseum. The only 2-lap course in Mario Kart, and while that makes the track more special in some way or another, the track really doesn't feel that distinct. The track is still very fun though, don't get me wrong. There's a bunch of turns to master, ramps to fly off, and fireballs to avoid. And the whole track is just a madhouse of turns. But that's also its downside. The entire course is just random turns, and it makes the track pretty hard to remember. It's still a great time regardless though. 5. Rainbow Road. One of the better Rainbow Roads in the franchise, and that's due to multiple factors. For one, the entire course takes place above Mushroom City, which, besides being common knowledge for a long time already, is a really cool Easter egg. There's also many rainbow colored items floating in the sky, and of course, the course layout is straight up chaos. There's a lot of really tight turns and a bunch of boost paths to speed across. And of course, you've got the giant cannon launching you 50 million feet in the air. This track is fantastic. 4. Dino Dino Jungle. Talk about an original theme. Dino Dino Jungle takes place in a prehistoric jungle with multiple dinosaurs roaming about, like pteranodons and of course Noshi. And of course you gotta have dinosaur themed obstacles in it as well, like Noshi and water geysers, because those are totally dinosaur themed. Jokes aside, this track is a lot of fun regardless, with a lot of fun sections, like this bridge or the cavern with the geysers. Overall, it's a great track. 3. Daisy Cruiser. One of the most unique settings in a series, being on a big cruise ship. You explore different parts of the ship, including the main deck with a pool, the dining room with sliding tables, or even a cellar being slower but giving you a double item box. The track design is great, and the music is extremely fitting. I don't really need to say much more. This is a fan favorite for good reasons. 2. Waluigi Stadium. A track that can only be described by frantic. Waluigi Stadium brings you inside a sports stadium with many jumps and obstacles, like fireballs and piranha plants. You'll be getting a ton of height throughout a lot of the track, and the bumping music pulls off the vibes really well. And you also have a bunch of sharp turns to nail, making the track even more exciting. It's a relatively short track, but still so much fun. And 1 is DK Mountain. Most people probably saw this coming. DK Mountain is yet another fan favorite, and again for good reasons. Taking sharp turns, blasting off from a barrel, racing across a bunch of bumps, avoiding rolling rocks and giant cracks in the stage, and of course the wavy bridge at the end. This track has a lot of creativity in it. It's not the best track ever, but definitely the best one in the game. So there you go, all Double Dash tracks ranked. Let me know what you thought of the list in the comments, and what your favorite and least favorite tracks are. But with that, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and do more of that fancy stuff. And I hope to see you in the next video. Goodbye.